The midday sun blazed down on the crowded shoreline, its golden light glinting off the restless waves. The air was heavy with salt and sunscreen, the rhythmic crash of the tide mixing with bursts of laughter from tourists. At her post high on the lifeguard's chair, 24-year-old Mia scanned the waters with trained precision. Her bronzed skin, tied back auburn hair, and sharp, watchful eyes made her stand out, but it was her calm authority that truly commanded attention. Unfortunately, not everyone respected it. A group of 4 young men, their toned bodies slick with seawater, lounged not far from her station. They'd been eyeing her for the past hour, their whispers and chuckles sharp enough to slice through the ambient noise. At first she ignored them. She'd dealt with rude comments before, but the energy was different this time. They weren't just bored troublemakers. There was a predatory glint in their eyes. The leader, a broad-shouldered guy with a smug grin, sauntered toward her stand, his shadow falling across her legs. "Hey, lifeguard," he called up, his voice dripping with mockery. "You watching the waves or just posing for us?" Mia didn't look down, didn't flinch. Watching the water, she replied evenly. That should have ended it, but it didn't. Over the next half hour, the group lingered, throwing increasingly crude remarks her way. When a kid tripped in the sand near them, one of the men joked loud enough for everyone to hear. "Careful, or the hot lifeguard might give you mouth to mouth." The laughter that followed was sharp grating. Several tourists glanced at Mia, some with pity, others with discomfort. But no one intervened. She kept her expression neutral, but inside something churned. Every insult and mocking laugh was another grain of sand in a swelling tide of anger. Mia was no stranger to confrontation. Her job required her to be firm and unshaken in emergencies, but this was personal. They weren't just disrespecting her role. They were trying to strip away her dignity in front of the entire beach. As the sun climbed higher, their harassment escalated. One of them brushed deliberately close to her stand, pretending to trip so he could grab her calf, squeezing it before grinning up at her. Her hand twitched toward the whistle around her neck, but she held back. If she acted now, they'd scatter laugh and keep the power of the moment. She wanted something that would end their behavior for good. Her gaze shifted to the breaking waves where the rip current was strongest. She knew the tides better than anyone here knew where the sand was soft, where the waves could knock someone flat if they weren't prepared. An idea began to form, sharp, satisfying. She didn't just want them to stop. She wanted them to feel the kind of helplessness they'd tried to force on her. The leader caught her, looking at the water, and smirked. "What's the matter? Want us to join you for a swim?" Mia's lips curved into the faintest smile. Not yet, she thought, but soon. Because when they finally did join her in the water, it wouldn't be on their terms. And when it happened, every bystander who'd seen her humiliation would see something else, their downfall. The afternoon crowd had grown thicker umbrellas, sprouting like wildflowers along the shoreline. The bullies had moved closer to Mia's post, claiming a patch of sand where they sprawled on towels and kept their eyes fixed on her like vultures circling. They laughed too loudly, shoved each other in mock wrestling matches, and called out remarks as if daring her to react. When her shift took her down from the chair to patrol the beach, they saw their chance. Mia walked the shoreline with her rescue tube slung over one shoulder, scanning the waves. She'd taken just a few steps past their spot when one of them, the tallest with messy blonde hair, stepped directly in front of her. "Whoa, careful," he said, holding his arms out theatrically, forcing her to stop. "Wouldn't want our lifeguard princess to trip over the sand." She sidestepped without a word, but before she could move past, another cut her off from behind. A third circled to her right, trapping her in a loose half circle. Beachgoers looked up from their towels, sensing tension. The leader leaned in, voice low but venomous. "You know you've been ignoring us all day. That's not very polite." His gaze raked her up and down. "We just want to get to know you." better. Mia's jaw tightened. Move, she said, her voice flat. They didn't. The blonde one gave a mocking gasp. Ooh, she's feisty. He reached out his fingers, brushing the hem of her red shorts. Bet you'd look better without these. A ripple of discomfort ran through the nearby crowd. A mother pulled her child closer. Two teenagers whispered their faces tight with unease. The bullies didn't notice or didn't care. The moment stretched taut. Mia's knuckles whitened around her rescue tube. She could end this right now, but the plan in her head was still incomplete. And she wanted more than a quick escape. She wanted them to learn. Tell you what, the leader said, his smirk widening. You meet us down by the rocks after your shift, and maybe we'll stop teasing you. It was an invitation, laced with threat, and they all knew it. Mia met his eyes, her own expression unreadable. Fine, she said, simply stepping past him at last. The group exchanged triumphant looks, thinking they'd won. But what Mia was really agreeing to wasn't a date or a surrender. It was the first step in her trap. She spent the next hour patrolling her mind, turning over the details. The spot they'd chosen down by the rocks was perfect. The water there was deeper, the current unpredictable. Anyone without training could find themselves struggling in seconds, and she would be waiting not to save them immediately, but to let them taste the helplessness they so enjoyed inflicting. When her shift neared its end, Mia climbed back into her chair. From up high, she watched the group laugh and splash one another in the shallows. They had no idea they were already standing on the edge of their own humiliation. She didn't smile. She didn't need to, because by the time the sun touched the horizon, their laughter would turn to panic, and their arrogance to desperate pleading. And Mia would be the one deciding just how long they stayed there. The late afternoon light dipped lower, staining the horizon in streaks of orange and crimson. The ocean's surface glittered like molten metal, hiding the undercurrents Mia knew so well. She descended from her lifeguard chair, the sand cooling beneath her bare feet, and began her slow walk toward the rocky end of the beach. She didn't have to check if they were watching. She could feel it. The bullies were gathered in a loose huddle, whispering and grinning. The leader spotted her first, elbowing the others. Showtime, boys, he said, tossing a towel aside and striding toward the surf. The others followed, puffing up their chests, glancing back occasionally to see if she was still coming. Mia moved with unhurried steps, her rescue tube slung over one shoulder, every motion deliberate. She looked neither eager nor afraid. That puzzled them. They'd expected flustered compliance, maybe nervous smiles. Instead, she was unreadable. They reached the rocks first, splashing into waist-deep water. The tide was rising now, the waves stronger. Mia could see the subtle pull of the rip current, forming a narrow, invisible river, dragging out to sea. She stopped at the edge of the water, the waves lapping over her ankles, and adjusted the strap of her rescue tube. Thought you were going to chicken out, one of them called, slicking back his wet hair. You came? The leader said, a smile full of false charm. Guess you're ready to have some fun. Mia tilted her head. Fun? Sure. But I play my way? They laughed, mistaking it for a joke. She stepped into the water, each step precise. By the time she reached them, the water was chest deep. The current whispered against her legs, coaxing her toward deeper trouble. The bullies noticed the pull too late. The first wave came in hard, breaking unevenly against the rocks. It shoved them sideways, forcing one to grab onto another for balance. Mia stayed steady, her body moving with the water, as if she were part of it. You boys know how to swim, she asked lightly. They scoffed, obviously. Her lips curled, but it wasn't a smile. Good. You're gonna need it. Another wave rolled in stronger. Mia stepped back suddenly, letting the current tug her further out while still within her comfort zone. The bullies, trying to keep up, followed without thinking. The water deepened fast, and the pull of the rip current grew insistent, dragging them seaward. Whoa! Hey! One of them, shouted, his cocky tone cracking. Mia's eyes stayed locked on the leaders as the first signs of panic flashed across his face. The water around them churned with hidden strength, pulling at their legs, making it impossible to stand firm. Problem? She asked, her voice calm over the hiss of the waves. They were treading water now, arms flailing, and the laughter had stopped. The leader sputtered. This isn't funny. No, Mia agreed. It's not. The next wave lifted them, then dropped them unevenly. One went under for a moment, resurfacing with a gasp. The rocks were now too far to reach without a fight. Their bravado cracked, replaced by dawning realization. She let the silence between them stretch, the sound of their frantic splashes filling it. The trap was sprung. From the shore, beachgoers had started watching, sensing the change in mood. To them, it looked like the cocky young men were suddenly struggling in the water, and the lifeguard was right there, unbothered, in complete control. Inside, Mia's pulse was steady. They wanted her attention. Now, they had it on her terms. The current wrapped around the bullies like an unseen hand, tugging them further from safety with every passing second. Their earlier swagger had dissolved into flailing arms and uneven breaths. The leader tried to swim toward the rocks, but the water dragged him sideways, spinning him off course. Mia stayed just beyond their reach. Her rescue tube still looped over one shoulder. The water was at her collarbone now, but her movements were fluid, effortless, born from years of training and countless drills in conditions far rougher than this. "You're the lifeguard!" The blonde one gasped, eyes wide. "Help us." "I will," Mia said evenly, "but first you're going to listen." A wave surged, shoving one of the smaller guys beneath the surface. He came up, coughing, panic flashing across his face. The others instinctively reached for him, which only made them all drift closer to the heart of the rip. Mia's voice cut through the noise. "Stop fighting the water. Let it take you out. Then swim parallel to the shore." The leader barked, "We don't care about your damn lessons. Just get us out." Her expression hardened. "You cared enough to trap me earlier. Now, you're the ones trapped." "Feels different, doesn't it?" Another wave hit, forcing them under again. When they resurfaced, their eyes darted wildly. No more smirks, no more taunts. They were losing strength. The shore seemed impossibly far. The crowd of onlookers, a blur of faces framed by the setting sun. Mia took a slow breath, then finally moved closer. She shoved her rescue tube toward the nearest one. "Grab on." He did, his knuckles white as he clung to the buoyancy. She towed him toward the edge of the current, keeping her pace deliberate. "When I let go, you swim sideways," she ordered. He nodded frantically. One by one, she repeated the process, but she didn't rush. She made sure each of them fought the pull long enough to feel it in their bones, the helplessness, the loss of control. By the time she reached the leader, he was trembling, his breaths ragged. She shoved the tube at his chest. "Hold on," she said, her tone flat. His fingers wrapped around the foam, but he didn't meet her eyes. Not until they reached calmer water did he look at her. And when he did, the cocky glint was gone, replaced by something closer to shame. As they stumbled onto the wet sand, coughing and gasping, the watching crowd erupted into scattered applause. Mia stood over them, dripping, her gaze steady. "You owe the beach an apology," she said loud enough for the nearby audience to hear. The leader hesitated, then muttered, "We're sorry." The others echoed him, their voices shaky, but Mia wasn't finished. "You wanted to play games with someone's safety. Today it was yours. Remember that the next time you think about crossing a line." The murmurs of approval from the crowd were like a quiet tide washing over the moment. The bullies, still dripping and sand-covered, could do nothing but nod. From the look in their eyes, Mia knew her lesson had landed exactly where it needed to. The bullies knelt in the wet sand, their chests heaving, seawater dripping from their hair and shoulders. Every bit of their earlier arrogance had been stripped away by the rip current and by Mia's control over the situation. Around them, beachgoers lingered, some with phones in hand, others simply staring the murmurs of conversation, blending with the hiss of the surf. Mia stood tall the last streaks of sunset, painting her in bronze and gold. Her whistle hung silent around her neck, but her presence alone kept the moment frozen. The crowd waited, sensing this wasn't over. The leader finally raised his eyes to meet hers. His voice was low hoarse. "Please, just let us go." Mia stepped closer, the water swirling around her ankles. "Go," she repeated, her tone calm but cutting. "I've already let you go. The ocean doesn't let everyone walk away." One of the smaller men swallowed hard, glancing at the water as though it might pull him back in at any moment. "We get it," he muttered. "No," Mia said sharply, her gaze sweeping over all four. "You don't get it. Not yet." She pointed toward the stretch of beach where the families and children had gathered earlier. "When you cornered me in front of those people, you didn't just disrespect me. You showed them it was okay to treat someone like that. What if it was one of them? Next, a girl younger than me. A kid." The leader flinched, guilt flickering in his expression. The other three avoided her eyes. Mia's voice softened, but it carried across the sand. "You think strength is about who you can intimidate. It's not. Real strength is knowing you could hurt someone and choosing not to." The silence was heavy. Even the waves seemed to pause. Finally, the leader lowered his head. "We're sorry," he said, again louder this time. The others echoed him, their voices shaky but clear. Mia gave a small nod. "Then remember this feeling, the helplessness, the fear, and remember who pulled you out of it." She stepped back, letting them stand. As they trudged away toward their towels, heads down, the crowd slowly began to disperse. A few strangers gave Mia quiet nods of respect. Others whispered her name, like she was a story they'd carry home. When the last of the onlookers had gone, Mia turned back to the water. The ripped current was still there, silent and invisible beneath the surface. She knew it would always be there, just like people who thought they could cross lines without consequence. But she also knew she'd always be ready. She climbed back into her chair, the cool evening breeze drying the salt on her skin. Down the beach, the four bullies gathered their belongings and left without looking back. The ocean rolled on unbothered. But for those men, its power and hers would not be so easily forgotten. Some lessons are best learned in the moment they matter most. The bullies came to the beach thinking power meant dominating someone, embarrassing them, and walking away unscathed. What they discovered instead was that arrogance crumbles fast when faced with forces they can't control, and a person who refuses to be a victim. Mia didn't humiliate them out of spite. She gave them a glimpse of their own weakness, long enough for them to recognize the danger of their behavior. Her control in the water mirrored the control she kept over her anger, showing that retaliation can be sharp without being reckless. The lesson was simple, but lasting disrespect is a dangerous game, and those who play it may find themselves at the mercy of someone stronger in more ways than one. Real strength is knowing when to strike and when to simply let the tide carry the message home.